It's good stuff. How about you, Claiborne?
You know, I'd actually echo something that Ray said, and that is, I learned more from the mistakes that people made than I really did from watching people succeed. And it was really within our company in some ways how we treated folks and how just our structure of our leadership, and we were a bit stuck. And I followed that model when I first became CEO because I thought that's what you were supposed to do. And these qualities that I outlined at the beginning are things that I learned. They should be obvious, but they just weren't obvious to me when I was 40 years old. Treating people properly, giving credit, just the soft issues are so important. And I really learned those from looking at some of the people who were in positions of responsibility in our company, and they were smart people, smarter than I am, engineer-driven, and really good, but they lacked some pieces that could create a culture of success. And so it's kind of similar to you, Ray. It's kind of looking at some things that didn't work and learning from that. And learning the hard way. I mean, I tell people, I got my job in 1994. In 1995, 96, and 97, if you want to know who the worst chief executive officer in America was, you're looking at him. I was awful. And just by the grace of a board that let me make mistakes and stayed the course, I figured out how to do it.
Now, what were you so bad at in those years? What did you do wrong?
I was too tough on people.
Okay.
I was tough. I was working easy. Oil prices were low, and our company was struggling, and I was easily working. Oh my gosh. Just 60 to 80 hours a week, traveling constantly, hard on myself, and I was so hard on people. If they did anything that was wrong, I'd say, you're letting me down, you're letting the company down, you're letting the shareholders down, and it's dispiriting. And you've got to create a culture of high expectations and really demanding, but you got to be very fair about it, and you've got to use those softer skills to motivate people, especially today. It's a little bit harder today. People are a bit more difficult to motivate, not motivate, but lead today. And I just missed that piece. I thought to be a CEO, you had to be a tough guy and just be demanding and never relent. And it may work for some people. That did not work for me.
What turned it around for you? What was your wake-up call?
I was failing dramatically.
Did somebody intervene?
No. I was failing dramatically. And it was almost an epiphany for me, quite frankly, like shaving in the morning. And I went, Claiborne, you're actually a nice person. You're actually a very good, I was raised by nice parents and have a nice family and I'm a nice guy. So why did I shed that when I became CEO? And by God, if I'm gonna fail at this, I'm gonna fail being me. And I think that's also a point. You gotta be your own self, and everyone's different, but you have to be true to who you are. And so when I did that, and I literally went and told people like that day or that week, you're important to us, you're important to me, you're important to the company, and I want to help you be successful, and I want to help you build an estate in your family. If we're successful, I'll make sure you share in that success. And if someone screws up once, you never fire them. If they screw up twice, you never fire them. Third time, you probably should. But the first, and I was, oh, damn it, you're going to go. I mean, I was just way too hard. Yeah. And so when I made that change, then we just got the culture right, and people started working harder, and we got ideas, and then ultimately $100 oil. I never, ever, don't say that's important, but by then we had made a bunch of discoveries, including a 500 million barrel field, which is the biggest in the history of our company, that a lot of smart people found for us.
Hugh, were you going to chime in?
Yeah, I was going to say that, a utility, there's a lot of technical people, lots and lots of engineers, accountants, much like your business, I'm sure, Claiborne, and yours as well, Ray. And I think there may be historically, there's been a belief that, well, if this person is a really, really good engineer, they can be a great leader of technical areas of the company. And that's not necessarily always the case. In fact, I think sometimes I've seen it where it's probably just the opposite, where the technical skills of leading in a larger organization, surely you need to understand the business, but you could be the smartest engineer, but if you don't have the soft skills, as you were talking about, Claiborne, it's very difficult to get a culture in an organization, to lead it, to carry it, to take it where you ultimately want to go, because the people are not going to believe in you. They don't think that you're going to have their back when they need it, when they need you. So just because they're a great engineer or a great accountant doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be a great leader. We've seen that in spades in our company.
I have much more for all of you, but I think this would be a good time to ask for some questions from the audience. I am going to have trouble seeing into this works better when I do this visor thing right here. So if you have a question, raise your hand and I will call on you. We will go with Miss Elizabeth over here, and then I will come to you.
So my question is for Claiborne. You mentioned it's difficult to lead people today or motivate people today. Why do you think that is?
It's a less hierarchical world today, and it's a world where when people enter the workforce, there's more of a job hopping mentality. And there's more of just kind of a less of a grind it out a bit. And so millennials just in a certain sense just aren't the kind of the classic company people that I probably personified, and these two guys probably do too. And so you have to think about leading them, I think, recognizing that. And I see it because I've got 4 kids who are all millennials. And they think like that. If you say, gee, what do you want to do? Well, joining a company and working for the same company their whole life, which is what I did, that didn't interest them much at all. And so how do you motivate? Then if you run a company, you got to have people like that. So how do you find them? How do you motivate them? How do you keep them? I think is a bit more of a challenge. And there's probably more questioning authority now. And that's actually not bad at all. That's actually quite good. But you have to manage that. So it doesn't get out of hand. So I just think it's a little, on the margin, it's just probably a bit harder.
Either one of y'all want to add to Claiborne's comments on that?
We've gone through a period within Entergy the last few years, a change of leadership at the very top. We had some culture issues that we really needed to work on, and we hired McKinsey. Everybody's got to hire McKinsey. But we've spent quite a bit of time of trying to, with lots of feedback from every employee in the company, of how are we doing on certain key behavioral attributes, whether it's career development or whether it's trusting, or do we set a clear direction? Do you believe that the senior leadership is taking the company in the right direction? And the millennial comment that Claiborne made, that there is just much more emphasis that we have to place and are placing on getting feedback, input from the employees of the organization. I mean, that sounds pretty basic. Sometimes it's hard to implement when you want to move fast, but getting every employee's input on the direction of the company, where you're going, on every attribute of the company, really, we've found is extremely valuable in terms of them trusting the company, trusting the leadership, and where we're taking the company. We've got a long way to go yet, but we're spending a lot of time with employee teams suggesting to management and to leadership what we should be doing differently.
You want to add to that, Rick? Go ahead.
Well, I'll go back to something that Claiborne said around grit, grind it out. None of these businesses here or out there are easy. And if we're honest with each other, we all have problems. And unfortunately, the problems that don't get solved are often the hardest problems. And they're the ones that require the grit, that require the determination that it's going to be solved. And in many cases, and in companies in this room, it means a difference in whether you're around tomorrow or next year. So people, there's a need for people that still have that grit, that are going to grind it out, and as leaders, you can depend upon them. And you resource them, and you treat them properly, and you reward them properly for that. And there's just no way of getting away from that. Everything's not easy. It's like the cartoon I seen recently. This young child was in Chicago. He walks out the front door, and his father's told him to shovel the sidewalk. And he looks at his phone, he says, "Is there an app for this?" And so there's just some things there's not an app for that require determination and not giving up, and requires the people that are willing to do that. And that's the future leaders, because people see that and they'll follow you because you've solved problems and you'll be rewarded with leadership opportunities, is what I believe.
And I have learned that you read cartoons. This is a very important note for me to know. All right, your question, sir.
For Claiborne, when you had your epiphany, it seems like sort of an extreme personality change. Did you have any difficulty with people sort of buying the sincerity of the...
No, I really didn't, because it really is me, and they actually knew it. I just had been trained and taught to be this really tough guy. And it wasn't me at all. And so it was a real easy situation for me to just be more accepting of failures in some of our folks, and but quickly get it right, and just don't be so tough. There's a difference between being really demanding on yourself and other people, but being fair and about it, than just being overtly too tough about it. And I got that confused in my own head about how to treat people. And if these soft skills, that's half of it. It really is half of it, is how you treat people. Somebody told me once, who worked for us, everyone's got this invisible button on their chest that said, "Recognize me, I'm important." And if you know that, and we all know it, call a name, ask them how they're doing. It's just things like that work. And then you build from that. Of course, you have to get strategy right. You have to meet budgets. You have to do all that. But you can find people to do that. And those are the things that just took me a while to figure out. Dumb me, really.
Miss Barbara.
We have a lot of veterans in the room, so I would just ask all these guys, what kinds of programs do you have, or what kind of outreach do you have for veterans who are looking for positions after they've served their country?
Well, I'll go first. I mean, we don't discriminate against veterans, and we're hiring every day and looking for leaders. And we find people that have been in the military, quite frankly, have been in a structured organization, make good leaders. As many as I see that are said to be looking for jobs, we have trouble finding them. But if any is in the room and knows someone, send them to Deltic Timber. We'll put them to work.
We've hired a lot of veterans over the years, and especially in our nuclear business, a lot of nuclear reactor operators come out of the nuclear Navy. So historically, for 40 years, it's been an area that we always recruit from. Certainly the nuclear Navy, but we have found people with military backgrounds made excellent employees, make excellent leaders, and we like to have them in the organization.
I don't know if we have a specific program that, in fact, I don't think we do, but I don't know that because I'm chairman and not CEO now. I hadn't been for 7 years, and so they may have put something in. But I'd certainly add that what we found, if you have a military background, man, your work ethic, your ability to get things done is really, really high. And so to the extent that we have job openings, and then certainly we'd be in a hiring mode.
I see a hand over here, but I feel like I'm neglecting this side of the room. Is there a hand up over here somewhere before I come back over here? All right, Ben, you lucked out.
Being discriminated against relative to the right side of the room, I would say, you mentioned earlier PERC. I'm just curious to know how much the political process has impacted any of y'all's bottom line.
Oh, come on now. We don't have that much time. Oh, Ben, brutal. All right, Ray, you get 2 minutes. I'm limiting this answer session to 2 minutes.
Well, unfortunately, we find ourselves in a defensive mode, trying to keep bad things from happening to us rather than trying to advocate for good things. Regulation is a huge cost, and the process by which you get it rectified or killed is an expensive process. So you've got to be successful at it. If not, it'll put you out of business. So it's an expense, but it's a cost of doing business.
Your favorite governmental bodies are EPA,
We love them.
DEQ. There's cameras rolling here, I'm just telling you.
I'll call it overreach is what the problem tends to be, unreasonableness. And quite frankly, what works in some areas doesn't have to work or doesn't have to be the same in others. And there's a large one-size-fits-all, and that's not necessary. And especially in areas where you don't have a lot of development and you're needing industries. And quite frankly, we've almost regulated ourselves out of being able to build new plants that's got a smokestack in it. And that's not good. I mean, that's not good for the future of our children. So.
All right, Hugh.
Ben, we're a regulated utility, so we're regulated everywhere you can imagine. And I could go on for hours, but I guess I'll focus on one area, and that is fuel choice. The fuel mix of the industry. And I'll just take our company, Entergy, ARKANSA. Historically, we've had, our fuel mix is 65-70% nuclear, which is good. It's very clean, very dependable, low cost, reliable if you have an existing nuclear plant. Coal has historically been 20-25%, a little bit of hydro, and the rest natural gas. In 2015, with gas prices so low, the state of Arkansas could probably meet the Clean Power Plan goals today, because our coal energy in 2015 was 3%. And so natural gas took the balance. And that is just an example of letting the market work. That's the most efficient way for customers, for prices, to change a fuel mix. Where the industry is going now is with lots of regulation that are hardwired in, very inefficient, but that's where it's going. And unfortunately, having a diverse fuel mix is really important for stability, price stability, supply stability, reliability, and unfortunately, there's no coal plants being built. There's a few nuclear plants being built, but there won't be many with the cost of a new nuclear because of a lot of the regulations. Just for Arkansas Nuclear One, we're spending over $100 million of making additions because of the Fukushima accident that happened in 2011. So if we don't watch it, we can price existing nuclear out of the market. And in fact, that's actually happening in regular and unregulated markets in the country. We've shut down one nuclear plant in Vermont. We've announced we're shutting 2 nuclear plants down, one in New York and one in Massachusetts, because they're no longer economic to operate because gas prices are so low. good thing that the gas prices are low from a customer's perspective, not necessarily if you're in the oil and gas business. But so the only plants that are being built really in the foreseeable future is natural gas plants and renewable, wind and solar, and that's it. And I fear that one day there will be a reckoning 20, 30 years from now that there will be price spikes, or there will be some issue that there'll be a lot of questions asked, why don't we have a more diverse fuel mix? And there's just no one's building coal plants. I mean, you're crazy if you build a coal plant in the United States. Now they're building them everywhere else, but not here. So that's one example of how, and the cost of power generation and the fuel, the generation plants and the power typically makes up 60 to 70% of the total cost of a customer's bill. So significant piece of the business and dramatic change in terms of regulation where we're headed just from the last 10 years.
Are you overregulated, Claiborne? A governmental relations person was asking. So.
Everyone feels that they are. I suspect our biggest challenge is going to be climate and the whole issues around the Paris Accord over time and how they're implemented. If you're an oil and gas person, you certainly feel in the crosshairs, and our competition is being subsidized, and that's a difficult place to be. In the power generation world that we supply, the solar and wind guys get lots of help from you as taxpayers, which makes that fuel, which isn't competitive. So it takes market share from us. And so how we navigate that, how we think about that, how we think about the future with mobility and cars, how they're powered, are all driven not by the marketplace but by regulation. Internal combustion engines are getting more efficient and lighter and much more fuel efficient over time. And so of course, low gasoline prices. The combination of those two would argue, you would think, for increased market share. But it's going to be a tough road to hoe when especially electric vehicles are being promoted and subsidized over time. So how we navigate it, how we think about it, how we react to it, I think is going to be real important.
You don't have any problem with electric cars, do you? You just asking.
The greatest idea around.
All right.